There's a lot of help out there for MVVM when it comes to C#, but there's not a lot of help for Visual Basic.NET. So that's what we're going to do in this video for today. We're going to look at the MVVM pattern for Visual Basic, why we should use it and embrace it, and what problem does it solve. So I'll see you after this. Okay, so welcome back. We are going to look at the MVVM pattern, what has caused a problem and why we should use the MVVM pattern. I mean, why does Microsoft expect developers to move from something like the WinForms, for example, going over to the MVVM pattern? And I'm going to show you some of my training material, which is absolutely fantastic. I call it an XL experience. And I'm going to open XL. We have drawn this fantastic picture for you. All right, so we would have a UI or the user interface where the user would click the buttons and be very happy that we have designed for them a fantastic app. The problem though is that the code behind, the logic, the business logic, and all the other code that we write to make decisions or to populate properties would all be in the code behind and is tied to the UI. That means that the code that we write in the code behind would not actually be reusable when it comes to other applications. For example, if I want to write an Android application, then I cannot use this code behind to use it in an Android application. So MVVM is a pattern that allows us to separate all of the code from the UI. And here's an example of the problem. I've already created a Hello World application, very simple. I'll stick in Hello World, click the button, and it says Hello World. Nothing fantastic about that. The problem is though that this code behind is tied to this form. You can't separate them, because the moment you separate them and you try and use this code behind somewhere else, you can't guarantee that the label on your new platform would be called a text box. You would not know that the property is equal to text. So by removing all of the code behind, we can then add this code into a different part of the application where we can then reuse it. So again, back to my fantastic XL example, this is the idea. Now, you might have seen a picture like this before somewhere, I'm quite sure about that. And what you would notice is that all of them say model, view, view model, MVVM, or model, view, view model. You can put them in any direction you want. It's just easier to think about it this way, because your model in Visual Basic terms will be a class or an object. So an object, so a person, a device, any actual object that you create within your classes. The view model, if you can think about it, is your code behind. And your view is your UI. So the moment you think about this, you can say, okay, I can write all of my classes, I can write all of my objects and keep them as individual DLLs, as individual programming code files. And I can have a code behind, which in this case would be all of my business decision, all of my loops, and all of my decision-making code. All of that will be in my view model. And what we'll do is we'll expose those values, and then the UI, the view, will actually just data bind to those fields. So in theory, we can use any UI that'll then bind back to the view model. So here's a bit of a quick look up. So if you go MVVM, this is for Android. And I can see that there are Android MVVM templates and examples. You can see that MVVM is used within the Android environment. If you go and look for MVVM for Xcode, so you can actually use all of your Visual Basic coding back-end code and tie a front end to all of those processes. Okay, so let's go and start looking at how we do this. Okay, so I am just going to close my fantastic Hello World application. I'm quite sure I will never be able to do that again. And I'm going to create a new project. Now, even though I'm not running 2019, I'm running 2017 Visual Studio, we are still going to be able to create some Windows Universal Platform applications. I'm going to create a new project, and I'm not going to go Universal, Windows Universal, and you'll be able to see that they give us quite a lot of a different kind of pictures here. So you can use it on computers, on your tablets, Windows phones, if they still exist, and on your Xbox or any other device that you can imagine. And I'm going to use a blank app, MVVM test. Okay, I'm going to save it somewhere where I can say share it later. Let's go for the data, personal YouTube video projects, new folder, MVVM. There we go. Okay, select that guy, select that. That is fine. Okay. Yeah, I think this should be fine. We'll leave it on the or shall we go for the full creators update? Let's just go for the latest technology there. All right. So what it's busy doing is just busy creating a basic application. Now you might find that this application looks very familiar if you're used to WPF or even Silverlight, because it does actually use XAML as the front as the user code, and that is also why some of the WPF controls on my previous videos, they will all work on these programs, on these applications. So a Windows Universal application will work if you stick on a WPF control. Okay, just for you out there. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is get rid of that very bright background. I'm just going to make it background a solid color, and just, I don't know, that should be fine. It's not as bright as a candlelight. Okay, so let us go and set up our MVVM pattern. What I'm going to do is I am just going to click on my project here. I'm going to add a new folder, and this is going to be our models. Again, I'm going to do the same thing, add, and that is going to be view models. Okay, and in our models, I am going to right click and add a new item, a class, and I'm going to call this persons, a person. Okay, as for our example, and now we have a person. I'm going to create a couple of properties. The properties that we use within the MVVM pattern, when you're creating the class, they don't need to be full properties, but when you do work with the with your view models, you would need to have full properties. And the difference between a full property and a non-full property is, if I went a property, let's go, sorry, public property, user name as a string, I've got a new keyboard, as a string, and then public property, user last name as a string. Okay, and that username is a small a. What else are we going to put in there? Let's put the age. As an integer. Okay, so these are called properties, obviously, but they're not full properties. If you want to change a property into a full property, you just click on it, right click, go quick actions, and convert to a full property. And you'll see when you do that, you will get a getter and a setter. All right, I'm just going to do that for this. It's not necessary in your class level, or on your object level, to have full properties, but hey, I can do that, so why not? I'm going to save these. That's my person. Okay, and for my view model, I'm going to add a new item. I could have just clicked class, but a new class, and this is going to be my view model. Now, the view model, because it ties to the UI, it's a good idea to name the view model according to the UI that you're going to have. So in my case, I'm just going to work with basic examples about a user and maybe have a list of users of some sort. So I'm just going to do users view model. Okay, and hopefully that'll be very explanatory when we start working with the binding, so you know which one is the user view model, which one is which. Okay, so let us go to the main page, and I want to load some data into a, let's say, combo box. I want the user to be able to pick a list of users. Okay, so let us do a little bit of a text block, and I'm going to change that foreground to something a little bit lighter, increase the text size to something a bit bigger. They should be fine. And now I am going to give it a text property. The text will be select a user. What am I doing? This new keyboard. There's already a text property. And away with you. Here we go. Okay, and then I'm going to throw in a combo box into here. Yeah, you are going to have a and let's go and make that also about 36. 36. Okay, we are going to make it a bit bigger. Layout, please. The width 250. That seems a bit small because the apps are very big. And let's go 500. Okay, and I'm going to stick it there. And even though we've got nothing in it, I am going to give it a quick run. Okay, there's nothing in our code at the moment, and nothing is bound between the actual application and a view model. Now, there's a reason for that. It's because the first thing I want to show you is that whenever you work with a property within MVVM Pattern, the moment you click on something, the moment you do something or you change something, that information would actually need to go back to your view model and update a property. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to have another value. Maybe we should just copy this guy, copy it. Why can I not do that? Copy that. Here we go. Let us go and move it down a little bit. So, okay, and we can change the text to selected user. Okay, now comes the fun part. Okay, we have the view model, and the view model is, like I say, it's just a class that is actually your code behind. So I'm gonna do, I'm gonna expose a couple of things. So in my view model, the first thing we need to do is come and collect and import the system.component model, okay, and this is going to be implement the iNotification property change. The moment we implement that, it actually creates us an event. How cute is that? Okay, so now we need to expose the property, and our property in this case is going to be a list of users. So public property user list as a list of users. List of person, sorry. A list of person. Okay. And I am going to format that into a full property. Like I said, a full property is required here. And the reason for that is because we need to add a notification property, notification change property. So here it is, a notification change. All it does, it raises the event for our event that notifies the system that a property has changed. So whenever we change this user list, when we set the list of users, we would need to call this notify property changed. So all I'm going to do is after the value has been set, I'm going to go notify property changed, and it expects a text value, and the text value is the name of your property. Okay, so if anything changes within our list of the users, it'll notify the user interface. So this is how you get changes from your code behind, from your model view, from your view models. That's how you get the code behind, from the changes from there into your UI. Sorry, it's very late at night, but the idea behind this would be that every time you change something, it'll automatically update and trigger the changes within the UI. Okay, so I'm going to add a couple of more things. Okay, so the code that I wanted to add here is just a I'm going to put a public sub to add persons, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a let's create a new dim my persons as a new list of person. Okay, and then for each, no, let's go for I equals 1 to, I don't know, 5. P as a person, P dot, actually we're just going to go as a new person and initialize it there as a new person with, okay, so there's going to be a username of I dot to string and name. So it'll show us number 1 name, number 5 name, or whatever the case may be, just so that we know that we've got different names on there. And then I'm going to do the last name equals I to string, and the open close brackets last name, and then the last one's going to be the age, and this is going to be equals I for now. Okay, so this is randomly going to generate about five persons for us. Okay, and then we're going to go my persons dot add, and it's going to be P. Okay, so we're adding our person into our list of persons, and what I'm going to do now is I am going to update property. Okay, I'm going to update property, and it is going to be a user list equals my person. Okay, so this guy here, the user list, is the property, and when we say user list equals my persons, what we are basically doing is we are setting the value. When we set the value, this property is going to fire the notification change, notify property change. It's going to raise the event, and it's going to tell my system that we have just updated all of the why is there an all else? We've just updated the property. Okay, so there we go, we have a view model. Now let's go to the main page. I'm going to right click on here, I'm going to go view the code, and immediately you can see that it inherits a page, but we need to make sure that it inherits also from the view model. So you can only inherit once. So what we're going to do is we're going to go a private, what's this going to be, user view model, user view models. I'm just going to user view models as new user view model. Users view model. Okay, so in this case, what it's done, it has now initialized our view model. We've now imported it. We have actually got a reference to that instance, and I'm going to go to the to my view model, and I'm going to add a sub new. So public sub new, and all this is going to do is add persons. Okay, so when the main page initializes itself, it's going to create a new instance of the user model, and when it does a new instance of the user model, it is going to add our 5 people to the property. Now in this case, you're not going to see the iNotification property change update until we add more people. So what we're going to do is go to the main page, and I'm going to change my combo box. Come on, this new keyboard, combo box. All right, and I've got a bit of code here so that we don't need to run through it all. Okay, so inside the combo box, what I've done is I've added a combo box item template, data template, and then a stack panel. Okay, and in there I've put in 2 controls. There is my image control, and why did this happen? Look at the binding, probably because I put some tags and some code, some names in for myself. Okay, there we go. All right, so this image is actually going to be another text block. Okay, so this is good enough for now. I've already done the binding on here, but this is from a previous project that I've done. Let's take the binding out from there now. Okay, so basically this is how you create a an item template for your combo box. You have a data template, you have a stack panel or a grid, whatever you want to use to build your template. I've got 2 text blocks in there at the moment. This one has a text property of nothing. That one has a text property of nothing. Good. Okay. So in my combo box, what I can do is I can now, because I have gone to the view model. Sorry, let's swap these two around. Okay, because I've now created a view model here, the system would not know what to bind to. So what I'm going to need to do is, when our main page initializes, so new initializes, I'm going to say me.data context equals, and this is where the trick comes in. You would need to equal your data context to the same instance that you've created here. So the user's view model. Okay, so we've brought in an instance and we've used that same instance to as our data context. Okay, that means we've actually now tied this user view model to the UI, and that's how you do it. And you can see it in the next example. If I go to the main page into the XAML, okay, so if we look over here, actually there's a bit of a couple of things we need to do. We need to import the system.component model, just like we did within our user view. And the reason is because we want them all to talk to each other. Okay, and the user view, I'm just going to make it shared. For the fact that any information that goes in between the view model and the information going to and back from the view model, if it's shared, it's much easier to reference all of that stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna go build and rebuild it now that I've imported the component models. Okay, that's all done. Okay, now let us look at the main page again. Okay, so in our view model we have something called user list. I'm going to just copy that name, user list, go to the main XAML page, and the combo box, I'm going to put here the item source is now binding the user list. Okay, and the mode is equal to two-way. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the user view, actually to the persons. Now there's a couple of fields that we have in the persons class. We have the user name, user last name, and their age. I'm only going to take the username and the user last name, and I am going to bind on those. And what we do is we go to the fields, and there we go, open bracket, binding. There's a username binding for that one, and the mode equals to two-way, and the same for this binding on here. And that's going to be the last name, mode equals two-way. Okay, so what do we say? Well, the item source is going to be the list. Okay, and because we've passed in our user view models and we made the data context, it already knows that our user list is a list of persons. And that's why every item binds on the person's property, the username and the user last name. Okay. And so basically this is it. We've imported our view model, the user's view model, into our main page, and we've created an instance of our user view model, and then we've also used that view model as our data context. Okay, the same instance. We've also gone to the main page. We have created, let me just scroll over here. We've created an item template. Now this is a template for each item in the combo box. Now each item will be a person, and therefore we bound these values from the person class, from our object. So the username and the user last name comes from the person's object. Okay, but the item source is the source for all of the items, and that's why we bind to the user list inside of our view model. Okay, so there's our user list. It's a list of persons. So we literally tell the combo box, you need to bind on this, and each item will be a person, and each person, each field will take one of these properties from the person's object. Okay, so let us give it a run. And as you can see, there we go. We have one name, one last name, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. Okay, so that is how you bind your values in visualbasic.net. You can see that this XAML backend is spotless. There's no additional code that does not need to be there. We've literally just done the import of that, and we set the component model. That's 3 lines of code, which is essentially the code behind. Okay, so we're going to cut it there for tonight. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to use the iNotification property update. We're going to update a value, and we're going to see how it works in reverse. For example, when we apply another set of persons into our property and see how this iNotification property change updates. Okay, until then, see you tomorrow night. Cheers.